tell me something? What do you know about Wakanda? It's a third world country. Textiles, shepherds, cool outfits, all a front. Explorers have searched for it. Called it El Dorado. They looked for it in South America. But it was in Africa the whole time. I'm the only one who's seen it and made it out alive.
I can see you.
The world is changing. Soon, there will only be the conquered and the conquerors.
Step into the spotlight.
You are a good man.
Step into the spotlight.
With a good heart. And it's hard for a good man to be a king.
TV Greetings 53 is a televised greeting card that will broadcast live on our TV Greeting 53 television show. Your greeting card airtime spot will be customized with your favorite photos, videos, words, and graphics to express exactly what you desire for any special occasion, such as engagements, weddings, recap, birthdays, or even greetings for an upcoming holiday. If you are looking for a unique way to surprise that special someone, acknowledge a special event or holiday, we have the televised greeting card for you. Be one of the first to express your sentiments live and in color. Just register from our website at www.tvgreetings.com. Contact us, tab, or email us at televisedgreetings@tvgreetings.com for a promotional discount and more information on our upcoming shows. TV Greetings 53, where your special person is the star of the day. Visit us on the web at www.tvgreetings.com to be a part of our show, and happy celebration to you.
There's a possibility that you look at me differently, love.
Zero, 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 zero,
Seeming like I'm living off this sack, uninspired as a writer, so hard to focus when most your money come from that. Mind racing time, wasting, meaning I need to make it before I die. On my way to the job, did I mention that I'm a teacher? On my break, I grind, fraternizing with the reaper. That's a tricky transition, had to switch my demeanor. Go back and hear my music on students' computer speakers. Grading paper, but not for my class. I'm counting it, hoping there ain't no counterfeits in my stash. Taking attendance for sure, but not the type that you thinking, no. I'm making sure my brother's still alive, cause these streets cold. Looked up and saw a kid with his hand raised, a senior, but he been supporting me since the 10th grade. He asking what happened, I guess he thought I quit rapping. No matter what I thought, that statement let me know I was slacking. Now I introduce you to JAFFE, I keep it that. In fact, I see the fact remains, the game is needing that. Blind world, it's crazy how they still can't see the facts. I told you this in 2012, so ain't no need to show and tell or reenact. I kept it JAFFE with you. Ain't no such thing as too honest, no such thing as too giving. My brother got killed behind it. I know if he was living, he keep it JAFFE with me. Like, is my mama really happy with me? Like, is my daddy, although he told me he wasn't. I can't believe it. You wait till I'm in my 20s to tell me what's the reason that ain't JAFFE. I sit back and wonder where did I go wrong. No such thing as too honest, no such thing as too giving. My brother got killed behind it. I know if he was living, what kind of man would I be if I ain't tell you the truth? There ain't no upside to it. The love of money is root to all the evil we do. To all the needles these people stick in their bodies and inject something so lethal into. It put your mind at ease, don't it? To get high from it, or to get by from it. I'm sick to my stomach. I had a play come back and tell me he dozed off behind the wheel while his daughter was in the car. Then he tried to buy some more pills. But I'm JAFFE enough to tell you, JAFFE enough to cut you off so you can see your failures, JAFFE enough to put your life before a couple dollars, JAFFE enough to make sure your daughter don't lose her father. What you know about pain? What you know about pain, y'all? Pain. I know all about pain, y'all. Pain. What you know about pain, y'all? Pain. I know all about pain, y'all. Ain't no such thing as too honest, no such thing as too giving. My brother got killed behind it. I know if he was living. No such thing as too honest, no such thing as too giving. My brother got killed behind it. I know if he was living, he'd keep it JAFFE.
I know all about the struggle.
I know for sure he'd keep it JAFFE.
Yeah. And it hurts every day since you've been gone. Hey. Oh, if you were still here, I know
What's your name?
Laura.
Surname?
Croft.
Laura, your father's gone. You can pick up where he left off. I see so much of him in you.
Brilliant.
Hello, Sprout. If you're listening to this, then I must be dead. I found something, a tomb called the Mother of Death. If Trinity succeeds, our world is in danger. Promise me you will stop them.
I promise. I think I know where my dad went.
That's right in the middle of the Devil's Sea.
It will be an adventure.
Death is not an adventure.
shouldn't have come here. But I'm glad that you did.
What do you know about my father?
Now I see the likeness, the recklessness.
Close the tomb once and for all. The fate of humanity is now in your hands.
Can't be too careful these days. The world has gone bloody mad.
I'll take 2.
He was looking at us like, you know, and of course we didn't know how to play. Or I mean, we knew like one song at a time. We would learn one song and play that song for about 3 days.
What
you know
neighborhood
what I'm saying? And thought we was putting on a concert.
What neighborhood were you in? Where'd you grow up?
Riverside.
Riverside.
Okay.
Okay.
West Side.
Yeah.
Yep. Riverside Drive, right there across from the golf course.
What was your band called at that time when you were in the garage? You must remember.
The Rhythm Review.
The Rhythm Review. Okay.
And that's the I always say that's my first professional, because we got a check. We got paid a check from playing the Northwest High School homecoming for $25 for the whole band. That was our first getting paid to play somewhere. We put on a concert.
And that's where you went to high school, right?
I went to Northwest, yeah. I recorded in his basement a demo, and that demo tape, a guy named Steve March, he took that tape to L.A. with him. I did a record for him. I played the bass on his record. I gave him a copy and said, man, if you meet anybody, man, let him hear my stuff. And he did at this. Ironically, it was a house with a guy named Albert Hazelwood that Tony Roberts was living there also. And Tony Roberts of Ebony Rhythm. Because Tony and Pam had moved to L.A. And Steve played his record, and they asked him if he had anything else, and he played my tape. And this song on there they fell in love with, it was called This Party's Hot. And it had, that song didn't have Reggie on there, but it had Flash and Daryl Simmons. Daryl Simmons was playing the Kawika drum on there. And Flash was on there helping me sing background stuff. And they liked that song. And so Steve said, well, that's my bass player, Paul. And he told Tony, he said, you know Paul, Hazel Ann's son, it goes back to my mother. So they called me and went through a couple of changes, and I went on and flew out there, and they kind of like took me under their wing, and he knew that I knew how to run sound. So when they went out on this tour, they had a new album with Leslie Wilson singing, Took Jeffrey's Place, that they were in the process of putting together, and I was with them all through that. And then when they went out and did gigs, they got me to do the sound, and kind of like ended up, I was kind of like doing the road manager job and the sound and guitar tech, bass tech, and all that, and all in one. Me and this guy named Wayne Arnold, we were the only 2 crew members. Oh, Bootsy Collins' manager at the time. And through the New Birth connection and a couple of other people, he listened to my stuff and told me he could give me a record deal if I could come up with my own project. So I went back home and talked to Gary, and Gary let me come in the studio on spec time. In the meantime, this guy right here came back home. He had been in New York doing, he had gotten signed to Sugar Hill Records, and he brought some new gear that he had got home. And I said, man, I got the studio time down here, man. Come down and hang out. That's where we ended up doing these tracks right here. That
you're talking about Reggie Griffin for people.
Reggie Griffin, yeah. He brought the drum machine and the vocoder and a keyboard. He had just got a Voyager keyboard and came down there, and that's my kickoff on having my own record out.
So that's how you kind of put your sound together, was through this equipment you had access to through
Yeah, he came and helped me, and actually, now that I think about it, it came back full circle to where me and him ended up, like in his basement, ended up doing that. And while I was doing that, instead of me shopping it for a record deal, Ricky Clark and Leonard Scott were coming down there to rent studio time with for the Ty Scott records that they were doing. And Ricky heard that. He said, man, what are you going to do with that music? I said, I'm going to try to get a deal. He said, we're going to put out a secular label. And they asked me, he said, I'm going to talk to Leonard about putting your music out there. Would you be interested? Yeah, so they pressed it. And I didn't want it to be called, I didn't know what I was going to call it at the time, because it was all me except for some of the stuff that he helped me with. But I didn't want to be like the forefront person like Paul Thomas. I didn't know what I was going to call it. And then they were going to call the record label Circle City Records. So I said, well, why don't we just call this Circle City Band? Because I didn't want my name on it as being like the artist, like a solo artist. And that's how they came out.
Yeah.
So it's to say like the front man.
Yeah, I didn't want to be the front man. Matter of fact, I took my voice off of Magic. And so Lonnie, I said, man, listen to this. I want you to sing on this. Man, you already, that's the song. I said, no, I don't want my voice on there singing lead. I don't like my lead voice. And I don't want to be the lead singer. So he just, but I wanted him to do it in his own swag. And at the time, I wanted that Ohio kind of sound on it, like Ohio Players, a Junie, and Lonnie is a master impressionist. He can sound like anybody. So, but he went in there and just took my melody and then enhanced it with the sound of his voice and did his own thing on there. So.
Yeah, when I heard those records and saw the name of the group, Circle City Band, like probably people all over the world, I pictured, you know, a bunch of guys in the studio.
Oh man, that's exactly what I was going for.
When
make it sound like, make it be a band. And if I was doing all the vocals, it wouldn't have been like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Lonnie was like the icing on the cake, like the David Ruffin on Temptations or something. You know, he's a real lead singer. Lonnie's a unsung cat. That cat is special now to this day. He sings with the band Downstroke. One of the singers, they got like 5. They got like a Temptations that plays. All them cats can sing and play. Gooch from original guitar player, singer with Manchild, and Greg Russell, who was also with Manchild and After 7, and they got a whole band. But Lonnie's special. All of them cats are special. But
so the label Circle City Records, it was a spin-off of a secular spin-off of Ty Scott
Yes.
Records, the gospel label based here in Indy. And you ended up releasing a series of 12-inch singles.
They did.
Yeah,
I actually didn't know they were going to do it like that. I thought, I told them, I said, I have to do a whole album.
So against your will, the label had kind of, you wanted to put out an album?
Yeah, I did a whole album. I did 9 songs.
And against your will, they cut it up into...
No, not against my will. I'm not trying to say it like that. I said I didn't know they were going to just like put out... At the time, the 12-inch single was like the popular thing. That was like the thing. Like mixtapes are the thing now. The 12-inch single, but I thought they were going to put out Magic like on a 12-inch and then maybe one more and then put out the whole album, because that way we could tour, and if everybody liked the songs, you know, we put a band together and perform the whole thing, actual live band. And they just kept putting out the singles. They did 3, and I was like, man, so they never released the album. So unfortunately, but 30 years later. Those records were still out there on the internet and all that other stuff, and this record label contacted me through a series of events that really I couldn't have planned. That stuff came back, and they released the whole album in 2013.
Yeah,
exactly 30
Records.
Years later on Ubiquity Records.
In San Francisco, and that's, if folks don't recognize that name, that's one of the most respected soul reissue labels and one of the pioneering soul reissue labels. Now there's quite a few labels putting out vintage music from that era, but they were one of the first and one of the best labels to do that. I hope you had a good experience with them.
Absolutely, absolutely. They put it out like in every way possible, like digital downloads, vinyl. As a matter of fact, I think I'm one of the few people that I know of here from, you know, this area locally that has their records out on vinyl.
Yeah.
I got that album is a double record set, and it's still on for sale on Ubiquity Records website and Amazon and all the other stuff. You know, they put out a Circle City Band, Pandora, Spotify, all that stuff. You know, and it's also selling on eBay too. Yeah. And all that. They started off as a record store in San Francisco, yeah, Michael McFadden. Thanks to him, he's a veteran, seasoned veteran in the records.
And your original 12 inches with the Circle City Band are now collector's items. We were talking about this earlier. Magic, the 12-inch sells for like $200 now in the international collector's market. What was the
I wish I was getting some of that
yeah,
money.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's people that have owned them pre-owned, and so they sell them. Yeah, it's like it is, like you said, a collector's item.
Yeah. What was the response to these records when they came out in the early '80s? You know, Magic was a big record.
Then again, I keep reverting back to him. One day, this guy called me. He said, "Hey man, I'm hearing your song on BLS." I said, "What's BLS?" And he said, "Oh man, that's the main radio station. Frankie Crocker's playing." I had heard of Frankie Crocker, He said, man, Frankie Crocker's playing your song in regular rotation. I'm like, man, wow. So next thing after that I heard was a network that was starting up in D.C. that contacted Ricky through this guy named Lionel, and they asked to use the instrumental off the 12-inch for their theme song, and it was BET when cable was just starting. And so that, when that came on TV and the BET logo and my beat was playing in the background, that got it even more popular.
You were essentially wrote it became the theme song for the BET
for the station ID for the network when it first started.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, like Video Soul and Donnie Simpson and all of that stuff. Yeah. And it was on there for like a couple of years. You call it trade
industry publications, trade publications, yeah.
And it got reviewed in Billboard, Cashbox, Record World, all of the what Magic was really the one that, like I guess I'm like what you call a one-hit wonder. It would be Magic.
Yeah.
But people like My Place also as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're all those funky jams you cut are still sound great. And you talk about things coming full circle. You know, this music has continued to find new audiences. It's huge overseas.
Yeah,
and
overseas,
folks listening know groups like Daft Punk in France. Man, it's your records that they're trying to kind of recreate in their sound. How does it? How's that feel?
It's been sampled about 3 times.
Yeah. How do you feel about this kind of?
Oh man, it's a blessing. I couldn't, I couldn't be happier and more. I couldn't be more honored. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I've developed a relationship now with a label in Paris, Boogie Beat Records, with my friend Romano, and we actually have an agreement to put out a vinyl release of my new project, which is going to be called Circle City Band, It's Time. And Reggie's featured on there, Felton Pilot with Confunction, and of course Brian Thompson, my sax player, he's here by the way, phenomenal musician and young saxophonist that's making power moves right now, but we've been working together since he was like 16 years old, and he's featured on there, and quite a few other younger artists. We're teaching. I started volunteering at a school here in my old neighborhood in Hallville called EDUTAINMENT, and I've developed a school program. My company, by the way, that I started back in the 90s, UMEG, which is United Music Entertainment Group. I've since developed that into a business downtown here in Indianapolis. That's where we met, down there at my office. And I've had I have a production studio with a recording studio, full one-stop shop. And then also I started volunteering to teach. I've built a relationship with a lot of talented young people. And Brian didn't go to that school, but I was working with him also at the time, almost simultaneously. And so since then I'm featuring them also on a couple of my songs that are going on this album. And we also are going to collaborate and do an all-out, full-out show. And me and Reggie and Brad here, by the way, Bradley Lott, he's a part of the band too. He's here as well. We've already done some concerts since the release of the new record out in California, several as a matter of fact. One is that I'm proud to say we performed twice in the world famous Whiskey A Go Go in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard. Brian was with us, and also all of us played there. We opened up. We were opening at one gig and one date, and then they asked us to come back a month later, and we headlined it. And I think I know that the only other Indianapolis band that has performed there was Ebony Rhythm Funk Campaign, and I think Lester said in 1972 they opened up for a 3 Dog Night. So we opened up, but then we came back and headlined. So I think we're the only Indianapolis band to headline at the Whiskey A Go Go, especially playing funk, because the Whiskey A Go Go is a rock club. But James Brown played in there. I think I don't know, but I know James Brown and Jimi Hendrix played in there. So we got to get the headline dressing room with all the names written on the wall. I got to write my name on that wall.
All right. I said, come on now. Do y'all like the Circle City Band? All right, we love you. We love you. We're going to introduce one of our lead singer's original song. His name is Dion. We like to call him Dion Forever, y'all.
Yo, this is one of my original songs. It's on iTunes, Amazon, any downloadable site. Dion Forever, y'all. One more song, yeah.
Real quick, because we ain't got that much time left. I want to introduce the band. DI Forever on lead vocals, y'all. Anthony DeMoine Bush on vocals and percussion, bass, plays everything. Bradley Lott, White Chocolate we call it. The incomparable Michael Norfleet on keyboard. Brian Thompson on sax. Kim Storms on guitar. James Love on bass. James Strong. The mighty Rayford Griffin on drums. We are Circle City Band. We are from Indianapolis, Indiana.
I'm a big fan of all the work you did, so thank you for taking time to speak with me.
Sure, good time to meet you. I mean, good to meet you too.
And you know, when I talk to people about Indianapolis music, you know, people don't think of Indianapolis as a place like New York or Los Angeles where important things happen. But I always tell people this was like the incubator for a lot of revolutionary ideas that changed the world. And we think, you go back to Leroy Carr, the blues singer, or Noble Sissle, who co-wrote Shuffle Along on Broadway, that revolutionized Broadway, up to Wes Montgomery and Freddie Hubbard and that generation of men. I think the contributions you've made to music are on an equal caliber. And they haven't been, to this point, I think, is widely recognized as someone like Wes Montgomery, who's kind of an iconic name. But the work you did is just, when you look at a list of the records you were involved in, these are records that changed the world. And it's just really powerful, the creations that you've been a part of. So, yeah, I'm just eager to learn a little bit more about you. I kind of understand where your story picked up with Manchild, but I don't know much about your life before that. But yeah, tell me a little bit about your childhood here, and yeah.
Well, tell me where you want to start.
Yeah. Did you grow up in Indianapolis?
No, I didn't actually.
Yeah.
I actually went to grade school in Houston, Texas. Well, we were in Indiana. We moved to Texas when I was like 4 years old or something like that, and then spent again my childhood in Houston. We came back here when I was about 13 or 14, more like 15. So I started high school here in Indianapolis. I am from a musical family. My mother's baby brother was a guy named Clifford Brown, who anybody who knows jazz knows that is one of the greatest jazz trumpeters of all time, literally. He and Quincy Jones were buddies when they were literally in their 20s, early 20s, and both played together in a lot of the big bands back in the day. But anyway, coming from a musical family, music was just in my blood, and my original instrument was saxophone. I played it all through junior high school, well, in grade school, junior high school. I actually played baritone sax when this horn was bigger than I was. But by the time we got here to Indianapolis, my younger brother Rayford also wanted to play drums. All he had was one snare drum. I was playing alto. We actually even had a little band together with this one snare drum and two saxophones at one point in time. But when I got here to Indianapolis, I went to Broad Ripple High School and ended up starting with a band. I believe we called ourselves the Soul Continentals or something like that. All the groups in those days were the soul something in the early 70s. Soul, at least the inner city bands, soul this, soul that. And from that point, I met a guy named Anthony Johnson, A.J. Johnson, and he was already playing in the nightclubs. And I had to ask my father, could I play in these? And my father was like, I don't know about that. I need to meet the band leader. The band leader was this guy named Billy Ball, and he had a group called Billy Ball and the Upsetters. And he had to come and convince my father it was okay for me to come and play in these nightclubs. My father still wasn't crazy about the idea, but he let me do it. So from the time I was 16, I was heading down to the B&M Tavern on the south side and a lot of these little clubs and playing saxophone. A guy named Harold Gooch happened to be the guitar player in the band. I would pick up his guitar every now and then and fool around with it. Long story short, along the way I started to learn guitar. By the time I was 18, I was fairly proficient on guitar in just a couple of years. And I remember the lead singer of the band, was a guy named Robert Banner, or Bobby Banner, as a lot of people call him. We went out to a club one night, and he said, "Bitch, come on, man. Come on, let's sit in." I was like, well, they don't have a saxophone. Play guitar, man. I was like, oh my goodness, I've never been on stage with a guitar. And I remember very vividly the first song I ever played on the stage was "If Loving You Is Wrong, I Don't Want to Be Right" behind Bobby Banner. I played on guitar. But my feel, I played it almost like Jimi Hendrix might have played it or something. I played it with a little more feel to it. And from that point on, I was just playing a lot more guitar.
Did you record when you were with Billy Ball? Did you play on any of the 45s?
No, I know Billy had some recording, but at that time, no, I didn't do any recording. Similar to what Paula was saying, even though I was doing it before because I'm older, I would take a couple of cassettes and bounce tracks back and forth together to multi-track before I actually had a multi-track machine. But no, we didn't do any recording. We didn't really get interested in recording until the band morphed into what became Manchild, because there were different iterations of the band, through the years. But by the time we became Manchild, or changed the name to Manchild, we were starting to write a lot of original material and get interested in recording a lot more. And
yeah, you mentioned you were playing guitar at this kind of jam session. What did that lead to?
What did it lead to?
Yeah.
Well, again, just the fact that it led to me playing more guitar in the actual band as opposed to just playing saxophone. Again, the band morphed and changed in a lot of different ways. We had a horn section. I would be in the horn section. Then I got a keyboard. I started playing clavinet. But primarily, I guess, the forte was guitar. By the time, like I said, by the time the band morphed with all the different names and changes and lineups, by the time we became Manchild, Flash Farrell was the lead singer. Chucky Bush was the keyboard player. Harold Gooch was the other guitar player, the main rhythm guitar player. Myself, AJ, and did I say Flash Farrell? And basically we again got very interested in recording, and we were starting to write a lot. We without trying to sound like I'm tooting my own horn too much, we were pretty much had become the top R&B band in town. Everybody was kind of looking at us at one point in time, to the point that we weren't really even looking for a record deal necessarily, but Jay Johnson, who happened to be at TLC at the time, and a lot of I remember Dee Warsaw, a lot of the guys were like, man, you guys should be recording. And Jay Johnson actually helped us get a record deal. So at that point in time, obviously, we had tons of material. And to back up just a little bit, at one point, Harold Gooch left the band. And my younger brother, who's a drummer, mainly jazz drummer, who had opened up for Jean-Luc Ponty and a lot of groups, he was with another young band called Tarnished Silver. They were a little younger than us. 3 years is a big gap when, you know, when you're 19 or 20 years old and the kids that are 16 or 17, like, oh, those are little kids. So there's this young guy that was in their band, a guy named Kenny Edmonds. And long story short, we ended up hiring him in our band, along with Darryl Simmons. And that was right when we were doing our first album. And as far as the Man-Child first album, the rest is history. That became the lineup. And of course, Kenny Edmonds later became Babyface. I mean, that's a whole other story into itself.
For sure.
But we hired him in the band right when he came out of high school for the most part.
Yeah, you made 2 albums for the Shy Sound label, is that right?
Yep, Shy Sound.
Incredible albums that still sound amazing today, in my opinion. And, you know, the group dissolved after the second album, right? Babyface left, and a couple other members left. What was your kind of exit from Man-Child?
Well, I was the leader of the group,
yeah.
And needless to say, when Kenny left, he left with most of our blessing because he really felt like he needed to do something on his own. And he was writing songs so much that a lot of them just didn't fit the Man-Child sound, so, you know, he needed to do his own thing. Be honest with you, when he left the band, I kind of felt like, well, the band isn't really what it was. And also, as Paul alluded to earlier, I had come in contact with a guy named George Kerr, who was helping us on the recording side, and who happened to be friends with Joe and Sylvia Robinson up in New Jersey, New York area. We went up there to record some stuff, some rhythm beds for a project. Sylvia became, I suppose she must have asked about me and found out that I was the leader of the band. Not only was I the leader of the band, but I played multiple instruments. Asked me to come up and help work on a song. I came, helped work on a song. And the next thing I knew, I flew back to Indianapolis, and she would call me again to come back up. And well, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but basically I was saying that, look, because we were all out of a record deal at the time. I want to help you guys. I want to help the band get plus we had some legal issues with the name Man-Child. Changed the name to Red Hot. I said, we're going to help. I'll help you guys get a record deal, but I'm going to start doing my own thing at this point. The first song, I'm kind of skipping around here, but the first song that Sylvia called me up to work on, the Sugar Hill Gang, needless to say, had come off one of the biggest records to ever happen, which was a Rapper's Delight, which was the first multi-million seller hit rap record, and they were trying to come back with something strong, so she was looking for a sound. And they had already started on a song called Apache. They had the rhythm section together, bass, drums, and guitar, and she just, you know, some of the raps were done, and she just was really feeling like there was something missing. And so she just asked me point blank, well, Reggie, what would you do on this? I sat down, I got my Prophet 5 synthesizer out, and I just started putting all these different filter sweeps and synth parts on it, and the rest was history.
Amen. Amen.
And you're talking about Sylvia Robinson, who was I don't know what her title is, president, owner of Sugar Hill Records.
Yeah. Correct, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, before we get into some of the other records you played on and some of the records you made that are very important, I wonder how you developed, I mean, electronic music was an emerging concept, an emerging idea at that time.
Right.
How did you develop such a great mastery of these synthesizers? And I assume drum machines you were using as well?
Yeah, well, basically, again, I'll go back to the Man-Child days. I was starting to hear these sounds from Stevie Wonder and a lot of other people that were starting to happen in the late 70s. And I remember saying to our keyboard player, man, well, to the whole band, man, we got to get one of those polyphonic synthesizers, because that's where things are going. And I guess maybe everybody didn't really hear me. And I remember Paul also alluded to us being on this Air Force Base tour. I mean, he was in a separate band at the time. But I probably made $4,000 that whole year. But I took my $4,000 and I bought a Prophet 5 synthesizer. And I learned my way around it. And I started adding it to a lot of the things that we were doing. And again, pretty much I played keyboards also. Not as well as I played guitar or saxophone, but just learning my way around it and learning how to program, I was able to develop a sound that ended up adding a lot to a lot of different records for a lot of different artists. Also around the same time, we're talking 1980, 81. That was the year, I believe, the Lynn drum came out in '79. The Oberheim DMX came out in '80, around the same time as the 808 drum machine. But at Sugar Hill, we bought a DMX drum machine, and instantly, Sylvia just looked at me and said, "I know Reggie can work this thing." So I pretty much picked it up and quickly learned how to get around on it, and became the drum programmer as well as synth programmer as well as synth player, and for the whole studio. They own 2 studios there, and so pretty much everything that came out of Sugar Hill from after Rapper's Delight, I did most of a lot of the arranging, keyboards, programming, production, whatever was necessary for the most part.
And I understand that includes the classic, iconic record, The Message by Grandmaster Flash and his Furious 5, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, I read that you essentially designed the sound of that song, the synthesizer hook,
totally,
which that's the whole record. I mean, that's what grabbed my attention when I heard that record for the first time, was that sound. And you know, I mean, that's a huge contribution to the culture of American music, just music, period. And, you know, Grandmaster Flash had nothing to do with that record, essentially. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about making that and kind of your role in that record?
Well, actually, I mean, as you know, Flash, you know, was the DJ, so he liked to orchestrate, which he put together a lot of the tracks that he did based around samples and different things, because that was his forte. And he actually wasn't crazy about that particular song. But of course, Melly Mel being the lead rapper of the gang, but Sylvie was adamant about it. She really liked it and really felt that it could be big. Ed Fletcher, Duke Booty, was actually wrote the original song, and he gave me a lot of input as far as what he felt it should sound like. But I did design every sound that you heard on that track, all the synthesizer parts. I played most of the synthesizer parts. I believe there was one other keyboard player that did a few things, but I did most of it. And of course, we brought in Doug Wimbish. He doubled my synth bass, and Skip McDonald on guitar. But most of what you're hearing is me, as far as the instrumentation.
Yeah. I know when Rolling Stone did the top, I think, 100 rap songs of all time, they picked The Message as the top song, and they did credit you as in your role in creating that song. But I don't often see, you know, you weren't on the label. Does it bother you that you didn't kind of get the spotlight and get recognized for that contribution?
To a degree, sometimes I have to be honest.
Yeah.
But actually at Sugar Hill, at the time, a lot of the credits just didn't get put on a lot of the records that were there. As a matter of fact, I remember on a lot of the records, that Joey Robinson, who was Sylvia's son, he would put Reggie Griffin. I mean, you'd have, you know, guitar, bass for different people, and say Reggie Griffin, Prophet. And I always imagine a lot of people thought that I was some guy that came in with a long beard and a staff.
That's how people go.
Or something like that. But no, it meant Prophet 5 synthesizer, which was one of the main synthesizers out at the time, along with the Oberheims and all that. But I kind of gravitated toward the Prophet because I liked the sound and I knew how to get around on it.
Yeah, and another record that I understand you pretty much created on your own, I understand, is Scorpio by Grandmaster Flash. Is that right?
Yeah, well, actually, ironically, I am a Scorpio.
Okay.
and Scorpio Ed Scorpio from Grandmaster Flash, he had a lot of ideas for that song. And so he and I kind of collaborated back and forth and came up with a lot of it. And of course I did the vocoder on it and did all the beats. And again, instrumentation-wise, I believe that one is pretty much 100% me, I believe.
That's what I've read. So if you remember it that way, that's probably the truth. And you know, that song is categorized as electro music, right? Which was a groundbreaking new genre of music around that time.
Yeah.
And you also, around the same time, released a record under your own name, Reggie Griffin and Techno Funk Murder Rock,
right?
Which was also a classic early electro music piece. And you know, we hear about guys like Juan Atkins, Cybotron up in Detroit. We hear about people like Egyptian Lover out on the West Coast, right? But your name should be up there with these men. You were one of the architects of electro music, and to a sense, you know, electronic music, period. You know, your contribution is just unbelievable to this genre of music. And again, it's like I don't hear you mentioned in connection with some of these names. And does that bother you? And do you feel like, you know, you helped kind of create this new sound of electronic music?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was definitely there on the ground floor of it. You know, actually, if you want to hear something that's actually kind of funny and interesting, is of course Planet Africa Bambaataa and the guys. They'd already done Planet Rock, and of course we had Kraftwerk, you know, coming from Europe, and those sounds were kind of swirling around, even though we did something a little bit different. And honestly, Murder Rock, I almost did it as almost a goof or a dare. And I was listening to these records, and I said to myself, oh, I can do that. I can do something like that. And I came up with Murder Rock, and it ended up being the biggest single of my solo career.
And that's an 808 on that, right?
No, it is not. It's actually a 606 that I took apart, rewired, and made separate outputs on, because it didn't have separate outputs, and it actually has a little bit of a different sound than an 808. There's a guy named Chris Lord Alge, who a lot of people might know as CLA from Waves Plugins, who was my engineer at the time. It was the Sugar Hill engineer, and basically Chris and I put that whole thing together as far as him engineering it and making the 606 sound really huge.
Another record that I understand you really had a large role in crafting, correct me if I'm wrong, is I Feel For You by Shaka Khan.
Oh, unquestionably.
One of the biggest records ever of the 80s, but one of the biggest, most influential dance records ever made. Tell us about that song and your involvement.
Well, my involvement there was I got a call from my lawyer, and he was telling me that Arif Martin, who was and is one of my idols as far as the production goes. I mean, in my mind, back in those days, there were really two guys. There was Quincy Jones on the West Coast, and there was Arif Martin on the East Coast. And so my lawyer tells me that Arif is looking for young producers to work with because he's working on a Shaka Khan record, so why don't I submit some ideas? I was like, whoa, okay. And he said, just make a reel for Arif so he can see some of the stuff that you've done. I put together a reel of a lot of stuff I had done at Sugar Hill. And he obviously listened to it and said, oh, okay, so this is the kid that's been doing all these hits that are coming out of New Jersey. And he called me up, and we met, and he said, I'm working on this song that Shaka really loves. And it's a song that Prince wrote the basic song years ago and had on his album, but she wants to do it, you know, a little different. He had taken a run at arranging it himself, but you know, he wanted to do something that was really young, and he heard the stuff that I was doing. He said, he gave me the Prince version and said, take a run at it and see what you come up with. At the time, I was recording on an 80-8, which is a half-inch 8-track machine. I took it back to my little spot, gave it my treatment, I put down the beat, I played some bass, I played some guitar, played all the instruments for that matter. Took it back to him, and he said, I love it, let's do it. That's how he spoke, kind of. But anyway, so on that record, I ended up playing, doing the drum machine programming, of course did the arrangement, A lot of people think that Melly Mel wrote the raps, but he didn't. I wrote the raps.
Wow.
Again, bass, drums, guitar, keyboards, pretty much all the instruments. But Arif, being the perfectionist that he is, we went back and listened to the bass line, and he wanted to make it a little different. And so we took my bass off. He went back and wrote my bass line out, and then wrote some other parts to it. Literally, you know, writing it out. And at the time, I didn't have a bass sequencer, so we called in David Frank from the system. And David Frank sequenced the synthesizer bass line. I played Fender bass on top of that. And I actually, a little bit of trivia, I had a guitar solo on the song. And we were, I mean, Arif was loving where things were going. But then he kind of scratched his head and said, I'm going to do a little something different with the guitar solo. Long story short, he ended up putting Stevie Wonder on with a harmonica solo. So I said, well, if I have to move out of the way for somebody, I'll move out of the way for Stevie. It's all good.